Hello, hello, everybody. Good evening, Dr. Ellison and
Good
everybody
evening.
else. How are you?
Doing well. How are you all?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much, Dr. Ellison. With your permission, can we live stream this?
Yes.
All right. So today, the topic of the meeting is, or our Wellness Wednesday is all about, they say you are what you eat. So I want you to elaborate on that and then try to put the little spin of the situation as we are in this pandemic. You know, a lot of things have changed. I've heard people complaining a lot saying, oh, COVID did this to me. 20 pounds later, when you get away from your desk and you say, COVID did this to me. So first and foremost, how would you elaborate on the phrase, you are what you eat, and the good, bad, and the ugly habits, and then a little touch of COVID into this entire mix? How would that affect, and how would a brain power, where do we bring that brain power in order for us to keep ourselves aligned with the right intake?
Well, I guess starting with you are what you eat. I like to say it like this. If the chemical makeup on a typical basis I put in my body doesn't match the chemical makeup of the body, seeing where I came from the place that my food is to be produced from, and that's the earth. So what is in my food should resemble my bodily makeup, the minerals, the vitamins, the proteins, and so forth. So if I'm eating stuff that does not come from that ground, we say it like this in the nutritional world: eat stuff that comes from a plant but was not developed in a plant. You know, as we understand plant buildings.
The plant, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that we're eating stuff that comes from where we came from, in other words, ground.
Correct.
So if I don't do that, then what am I becoming if I'm eating a lot of this genetically modified foods that man made, in other words?
So how can we explain that to a common person in a community that stick to what you are made of? How would a person, where do you go to retrieve that knowledge, that information, the basics of, in a common person's language, in a very simple way? How can I simplify this for someone who, if I'm explaining that, they'll be like, what am I made of? Where do you want me to go and check that out? How would I know where the balance is in myself? You know, everybody has different composition of different chemicals. So go ahead and elaborate on that for us.
Well, I could put it in simple terms: go back to the garden. Go back to the garden. Go back to the farm. You know, because those kind of foods years ago, particularly when we had the right kind of fertilizer and all that kind of stuff, produced some of the best foods. And we didn't have as many people sick then eating out of the garden as we have people eating out of a plant, if you would, or fast food restaurants. Not that I'm bashing all fast food restaurants, but we got to simply go back to the garden or go back to the farm.
Right. So when discussing on, okay, farm, garden.
But if I can add this, and you know, I just don't, as I look at the animal world, I don't see a lot of them going to the fast food restaurants. I don't see the giraffes and the deer or the lion saying, I'm going to go get me a burger from here, you know, and expect the lion to have the kind of energy and strength that lions typically have. They just don't eat at fast food restaurants.
Correct. Now, looking back to the daily routines that we have, correct, you know, back then, way back then, farms, it was easy to get access to such food. You know, you grow and then you eat directly from there. Life was much simple. Now it's not like that. For past quite many decades, you know, it is not like this. We see obesity, we see type 2 diabetes in our young children, in youth. And then, well, as of now, the schools we're all online, but you know, schools have soda machines. The kind of food that is served over there that meets the minimum requirement of FDA, and we're serving to our future. So how would you shed some light on this? What is your opinion on that? How can we train our children to start having the right mindset when they make those choices, when life itself has become such, parents are working? When you talk about farm, when you talk about healthy, non-synthetic food, you start talking dollars. all I see as a parent is like, oh my God, now I have to go extra either to get that in different locations. And not only that, but I will be spending more money on it.
Well, I do tell people, because everybody's situation is different, do the best that you can with what you have, because I really believe that that my health is dependent upon what I know. More I know about, the best stuff to put in my system. And depending on where I am economically, I've got to do the best that I can. I don't want to stress myself out because, wow, the foods over here, they're better foods, but they cost so much. Now, we don't want you to get into stress. You've got to do the best you can. And as things change economically, maybe you can keep increasing the better foods in your diet. But it starts in the home. That child is going to learn in the home. So daddy, mama have to sit down with that child and say, look, here is the best stuff for the body. And educate them starting at home, so when the child goes out, the child will have a consciousness about the better foods to put in the body. And we know that all that stuff is all around us. You know, the temptations are there and so forth, but it's got to start at home. We got to train our children at home. Here's the best quality stuff to put in this priceless body.
Right. So now training our own selves. How do we, that's the $1 million question. Temptations are all around. I mean, sugar rushes we get day and night, you know, look at the sodas and it's like, oh, let me have just at least one soda. That one ends up into two and the third soda. And sugar, anything that is not that healthy, it really tastes good. It tastes amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And we crave. So training our own selves, our own minds, that's where I think that's the bottom line. I mean, we can sit in 20 million lectures, we can go attend anything, we can talk all we want, but the question is, how do we train ourselves as grown-ups in order for our behavior to be right, in order to be picking the right choices, and then it trickles down to the rest of the family?
Well, I'd like to start by saying this, that we as adults must take this mentality that my number one wealth is my health. I've got to start there, you know, and move forward with, would I put just any kind of gas in my vehicle or any kind of oil in my vehicle? We got to start with the thought, your number one wealth is your health. You've got one body. You're not going to get 2 and 3 on earth. So we have to start there with the mentality and take it very serious. Your health is your number one wealth. And then as we look around, we can see the premature deaths and things that occur, the sicknesses and the diseases that are developed, that the AMA, CDC, and a lot of our health institutions will tell us that we could change the state of our health by changing our diet and our lifestyle. This information is out there in major institutions. It's all over the internet. So we have to take it serious that my number one wealth is my health. And I've got to give some time and attention to promoting my health versus fighting disease. And that's gonna take some thought. That's gonna take some, I'm willing to sit at the table, whatever the table is, and learn, how do I take care of this body? Because let's face it, when we go to school, we engage in education to learn how to get that degree as an attorney, doctor, or whatever. So when it comes down to your number one wealth, we just gotta settle things down and be determined and not let it be, because many people get very determined after they go to the doctor's office and the doctor tells them, well, unless you do this, then here is going to be the results or the outcome. So many people don't focus on their health until they are pressured to do it by pain or by a doctor's visit that the doctor gives them news that they don't want to hear. So I'm a believer, don't wait until the pain or the threat of something develops. No, let's go ahead and get ahead of the curve, so to speak. Focus, because it's got to start there. A focus on, again, promoting my number one wealth instead of having to fight disease so much.
That is so true. And it's so unfortunate that many times when we get the verdict of a disease, a label of a disease or something of that sort, that's when many times people do find time to research.
Yep.
They do find the resources to go look for that natural, to connect themselves with that natural food, eliminate the synthetics. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way majority of the time it does work like that.
And I've got to add to that point, you know, if I can buy, and I'm not against it because I love nice things, but if I can buy a $50,000 or $60,000 vehicle, I shouldn't be complaining if I got to go and pay another 50 cents or 75 cents for that cabbage or that broccoli or that whatever. You know, when you look at it, people oftentimes spend more resources on those kind of things versus, wait a minute, if I'm gonna have something like that, let me make sure I'm taking good care of this thing right here. Because I've seen people complain about buying a supplement that might cost $35, but those same people don't complain about buying a vehicle that costs $40,000. So what is the priority?
Right. Correct. That is so true. When you look at it that way.
Yeah.
So quantity control, you know, suppressing the cravings. Should we suppress the cravings? If we do, I mean, you know, cravings will just keep coming back and back and again and again. And then at some point you will give in. Then comes the quantity control. How much are we eating? How much is too much?
Oh, for somebody 6'5", 240 pounds, he in particular is going to probably eat more than a Calvin Ellison who's 5'7", 168, 170 pounds. So I got to put that out there first. That person's diet, in particular, if they're into athletics and they're working out on a regular basis, you're going to need more fuel to go in the body. But going over to the cravings, I think, in my opinion, I was the worst sugar addict on the planet. I mean, just the thought of sugar or a donut or a soda, and I'm like, yes, master, do you want me to come and get a half a dozen donuts from the donut place? You know, I could drive by where they produce the donuts at and get that smell, and it's like that wizard donut was telling me, turn around. You just smelled me. You know you want me. You know? and the candy bars, and I do have to admit, I don't think I've bought a donut in 20 years, 25 years.
How did you do that?
I'm going to get to that. Hold on. I haven't drank a soda now, maybe. I think I drank one maybe 10 years ago. But in the last 20 years, I don't think I have drank a soda, 25 years. So the sodas and the donuts used to control me like mad. But here's what I found out. You cannot stop the cravings if you don't give the body what it's required to have. If you give the body good, clean, quality food, you're going to see less cravings. And see, and I tell people this, your taste buds, you can train them, because my taste buds were trained to love sugar, to love sodas. And I didn't realize when that sugar was getting in my system and it was hitting my nervous system and my taste buds and just activating stuff in me. But when I began to wean myself away from those things and put more quality food in my system that had minerals in it, like chromium and vanadium, that help deal with the cravings. Oftentimes we found out that when a diet is lacking, particularly in that mineral world of things like chromium that helps regulate your blood sugar, and vanadium, if the diet is lacking in those areas on a regular basis, you can't stop the cravings, because those guys are regulators. We got laws that govern just about everything in our world. So when you take the law or those guys out of the diet and don't allow them to have play, then you don't have anything to help regulate your blood sugar. So you're gonna crave until you change that diet and wean yourself off of a lot of that stuff. You're not gonna stop the cravings. You're not, because you don't have the police officers, things like chromium and vanadium in the system doing its job. I tried it and it doesn't work. So this is why today On a regular basis, I'll eat at least 5 Brazil nuts because I realize that they are loaded. Every day I eat them, not just for the chromium and the vanadium, but I get the fats out of them. That helps in a lot of different areas. I get the protein as well as those minerals and elements of vitamins too.
Nice. Well, that's good to know.
And I brought something that will help with the cravings. I can hold it up right here. I don't have all the items that are in there, but I've got. Can you see it there?
Yes.
I have. Now this, well, you'll see just the writing on it. But I have a meal in this cup. Now that baffled my mind years ago when a meal in a glass or in a cup. No way. But I just made. And now you're talking about dealing with the cravings. So please listen to what's in here. I have in that cup kale, spinach, celery, kale, spinach, celery. I have a slice of tomato. Then I have, and think about it, the kale and the spinach, those are what I would call it in the basketball world. I got Michael Jordan and LeBron James on the same team. So I put together a winning team. So I've got kale with all the tremendous benefits in kale and spinach. I've got celery. I've got cucumber. I've got ginger. Then on top of that, to give it some sweetness, because I'm still a recovering sugar addict, so to speak. So, and it's okay to have sugars. You know, the body needs that too, but in its proper form. Then I have some dates. I put 2 dates in this. 2 dates.
Mm-hmm.
And I put, I even had some blueberries. Just a few blueberries. And I had some pistachio nuts, about 17 pistachio nuts. And all of this is strategic. And lastly, I think, I forgot my pecans. That's what I forgot. I knew I forgot something. But usually I'll have at least 2 different type nuts in there. I put the pistachio nuts in there because you need the potassium in there or in your diet to help balance your salt intake. This is why you hear about salt leading to high blood pressure. Yeah, the body's got to have salt. It's got to have sodium. But when you get that ratio of salt and potassium out of whack, then the tendency, one of the tendencies is the blood pressure is going to go up. You got too much salt. So life is a balance. You got to have a balance in life. So you can take a good thing and go too far with that good thing, and that good thing could become toxic. You got to have a balance. So this is why you hear things like calcium and vitamin D, mm-hmm. or sodium and potassium, because life was designed in a balance. So I've got a meal in this glass. If I didn't eat anything else, now trust me, this is not all, because I have another one of these ready, waiting for me in the refrigerator. But you talk about something so delicious and the sweetness, and I'm getting the minerals, the vitamins, the fats, I'm getting all of that in here. And you're talking about good health. I mean, all of it is raw. Right. Now, I don't believe that you can have optimal health with a diet with minimal raw food in it. Food in its best condition is raw. Doesn't mean that we don't eat cooked food. You want to cook your beans. And I even graduated to a level about 2 years ago. You could have never convinced me I would eat raw collards. No way. And I went to this event that we had through the chamber, and this lady was back there. She and others were preparing food, and the way she fixed that roll, that stuff that was wrapped in collards, I'm like, are you kidding me? I literally ate raw collards. That was like taking me through Vietnam without a gun. I could not take in raw collards, but I did, you know? And so, but yeah, I literally have a meal in a glass.
So how many glasses of this meal? I mean, is it based on one's choice or one's body weight and everything. I mean, let's say you get filled by 1 cup. When is it too much when I need to stop if I am making that meal?
When is this meal too much? Well, one thing you want to do, you want to listen to your body. You want to pay very close attention to your body, and consider. I mean, something like 16 to 32 ounces. Just about anybody can deal with that. Yeah, you know, I would typically sometimes I'll do like 16 ounces in the morning and 16 ounces in the evening, unless I'm just in a mode where I'm going to drink all 32 ounces now. You know what I'm saying? But I had to re-educate myself to understand this is a meal, because had I not put it in that blender and blended it up, see, I mean, I put it in the very form that the food is going to get into before the body can get all the nutrients. Your colon, that whole area is a juicing machine. I'm like, well, just juice it. But it's a struggle at times, because you know how traditional we are. A meal in a glass, well, let's not juice it. Let's just put all those ingredients there on the table, and I literally have a salad before me. But because we're so used to chewing and not drinking, then we don't think that it is a meal, but it is. This is why I can take something like that. I couldn't do it years ago, but I can do it now. I can get more satisfaction out of that 16 ounce than a person with a large meal, because I'm satisfying my cells, I'm satisfying my body's nutritional supply. Whereas you take somebody who's not getting good quality stuff, then you'll see them with these huge plates, and then 2 hours later, I'm hungry again.
Yes.
Well, you have to consider the quality of what was put in the body. Because unless you give the body what it's designed to have, that craving thing is not going to go off. That appetite thing is not going to be suppressed, because we're giving the body food items, but what is the quality, what I'm putting in?
Dr. Ellison, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Please.
Okay. There's a couple of things that you said, and I'm wondering about. Okay, one was when you brought up the issue of satisfying the body, and you saying, there's actually some benefit to chewing. They said that mastication is a psychological part of digestion. And that's why you see people who go to a hospital and they are fed intravenously.
Mm-hmm.
They lose weight while they're in the hospital, even though they're getting everything they need. But they say that sometimes the fact that just the act of chewing kind of keeps them from losing that unnecessary weight.
Yeah.
That's one thing, and I want you to kind of speak to the benefit, detriment of that. And then the other thing is, as you're talking about these good things that you're putting in there, the kale, the nuts that you're putting in, looking at the potassium, sodium exchange, and what does your grocery bill look like?
I kind of felt that was coming. Let me answer the first one. Now, I love this, particularly if I'm on the run, and I use it too because I want to make sure I get my raw food intake. Because I like going by the rule of 50-50, 50 cooked, 50 raw, on a regular basis for regular maintenance of the body. It doesn't mean that sometimes it's not going to be more cooked, but I want to make sure I get my raw in. But no, I don't want to take away from the thought, because there's something psychological and emotional. All of that stuff is attached to what we put in our bodies. We don't think about it a lot of times. So that ability to be able to chew, and this is why our Creator gave us the teeth, because that is very important. So now, and by no means taking that away. I'll say this right here, though, depending on what kind of problem a person might be dealing with, this can help in a quicker manner, because I found out some years ago, we spend more energy breaking the food down in our bodies than a person out running 2 miles. That's how unique this operation is going on. In other words, you utilize energy to have to break that stuff down. But if it's already broken down for you, And if you're dealing with something that's life-threatening or debilitating in nature, juicing is one of the ways to help spring the health back, because you spend less energy because now it's already been broken down somewhere, you know. But never taking away the chewing aspect. This is like a supplemental approach, but then keeping the consciousness that this whole area, this intestinal tract area, starting in the mouth. Somebody just asked me the question today about, I think they heard me make a statement about, well, no, what it was, I went out to lunch with somebody, and usually when people go out to lunch with me, I think I told you that once, Uzma, how about you go ahead and get to the restaurant like 30 minutes before me, order your meal, and go ahead and start eating. No, let me get there 30 minutes before you, because it takes me so long to eat because I chew it. Some people say, man, this guy seems like he chews his food 50 times with one bite. You know? But I'm very conscientious that this is where the true, well, this is where the breaking down starts at. We got to give time for those juices, those enzymes, and all that stuff that's in this area to connect up with the food, so that we're not eating lumps of stuff. So when it gets down here in this whole tract area, now the body's got to work harder, and all types of intestinal problems begin to come because we didn't take the time to really chew our food into juice. Because the only way it's going to be transported throughout all the body is that the juicing machine must break it down. But as far as my food bill is concerned, believe it or not, I mean, because now I've done it for so long, but I'll shop around. But because now I'm more keen on it, I can go to the grocery store and shop just like that. When I first got started, my wife was like, "Where have you been? Why did it take you so long to get home?" You know what I'm talking about. Why did it take you so long to get home? I was grocery shopping, you know, and I'm very picky about what I allow to come in my body. So it would take me a while. But because I know where to get items here, items there that are cheaper in price, Walmart a lot of times has natural, good stuff at a cheaper price. So I shop around, and I encourage people to shop around so you can get the best that you can with what you have. And in that way, a lot of times you'll find out, even as you're shopping, sometimes some of those items that we think are very costly, you can get them at a cheaper price. So I'd say it may be because of Calvin Ellison now. My bill may be $100, $150 above the average because I'm so nitpicky and I love certain things and you know, so. But I'd say a person could live like what I live and do it by increasing their bill, maybe $50 to $75. Now you gotta remember now, I am the abnormal.
Yeah. Well, I think, as we start to discuss, bringing this into a community, can the $20,000, $25,000 a year guy, actually pull this off, because even though, like you say, once you lose your health, then, that's the end of the argument, really. But if the guy who's trying to make ends meet, and like you're saying, and I'm not going to presume, but I'm listening to what you're saying. You say, well, if you've got a spouse in the house that says, well, I'm not actually following that same program, and I'm trying to see why you're trying to follow this program, then it becomes an issue of how do you make this work in real time? Because I studied chiropractic for a few years, about 3 years, and it was the holistic approach to life, and I absolutely believe, if this is not working, then you lost the battle already. But with that, when you start talking about in real time, how do you bring this to a community that says, my grandfather, he ate all natural. He ate 3 raw eggs every morning for breakfast. And he died when he was 55. And here I am, and I'm living until I'm 75.
Eating bad.
How do you reconcile that?
Yeah. Well, I would start again at the reality that I want to be able to put the best in my system, because I don't know all of those factors that went into that person dying at a younger age.
Yeah,
Eating,
harder work. It was harder work. That's the reason they ate so much more,
yeah,
because they had to work harder.
had to work harder. Yeah,
So you got the internal work going on, the external work going on, and they died earlier. But that was a natural thing, they thought. If I die at 55 or 60, that's natural. Now if you die at 55 or 60, it's like, wow, what did you
yeah,
do wrong?
yeah,
So
yeah. But again, I say it takes time. It took me a while to learn this stuff and get it implemented in my life as I am today. And then here I'm a husband in my house, and so wife was like, "What are you doing? Where are you getting all these thoughts? Where are you headed?" And when she began to see the results of my health, skin clearing up. Oh my God. I mean, I was a mess years and years ago. I mean, skin discoloration, you name it, dandruff, a lot of issues that I haven't had now in the last 25 years. So as they say, the proof is in the pudding. When you start seeing the better results of a healthy body, healthier countenance, you're like, well, what are you doing? And then so my wife would start delving into it, trying it more, and resetting the taste buds, reestablishing better habits. Like, this is not as bad as I thought. Now I see what you're doing. And then the way you fix some of it, it tastes pretty good. Because, let's face it, we're all into how it tastes. If it doesn't taste good, we don't want it. Even when it comes down even today to avocados, I keep them in the house. Now, when I first got started with the avocado, there's no taste. I don't want this. But I kept studying and researching and finding out that this avocado is one of the most complete foods on the planet. Ellison, you got to learn to love it. So I got wise. So I will mix it up in a salad, or I'll put something on it, or put it in my sandwich. And all of a sudden, the avocado and I are now best friends. I don't even like to not have them in the house. But my point there is, it takes some time. And the best thing to bring a transformation in the home is a person who models it. And then when we take it over to the community level, I mean, most people, they don't want to have to go to the doctor 3 and 4 times, putting pressure on the doctor, give me the magic pill or whatever to get me healthy. Many people really do want to be able to take care of themselves and not have to outsource their health so much. You go when you gotta go. But I like to pull people back to responsible living and teaching them how to be in control of their health. And again, it's being said throughout many of our health institutions, the diet and lifestyle can help curtail a lot of things. So I like to encourage, when it comes down to the community, consider your farmer's market. I mean, do you have a farmer's market in your area? If so, support, go there. And maybe you won't have to pay as much at the farmer's market as you would in the supermarket, because, the prices are going to change. So I really encourage people to go there and or do something that I used to hate doing. I used to hate a garden because I just thought this terrible work with hardly no return, and coming from the environment of working on the farm. So I used to hate farming, So my point then is, we got to encourage people, grow some of your items in your own home. Just get a bucket, a few buckets or whatever, and grow some of these items in your own home to help augment the prices that you would pay in some of the store.
So the question that Tony asked earlier, for someone who is living on a certain dollar amount per year, it will be much easier to make that switch. But there are people in the community, and here we're trying to help out the community that is on limited resources when it comes to financial resources. How do they train their minds, and what prospect, which angle must they look in order to start shifting towards that change? Because it's not easy when you have bills so many, when you have children to feed, and live a life nowadays is a very expensive thing to do. So
Well,
how would you suggest, what would you suggest on that?
well, we do have to shop judiciously. If I look at that broccoli and it doesn't cost no more than that box of donuts, you see what I'm saying? Right there, I have the ability to make a choice of the higher quality food or that's going to tickle my taste buds. Some of this is the case that when we do go shopping, sometimes, and then the prices are lower at times, you know, am I going to choose to get the donut over the broccoli or the kale or the collards or the cabbage? I have to make that decision and be conscious of the fact that the donut is not going to give me the energy, the life, the health that cabbage, which probably costs cheaper than the donut sometimes, you know, when we really look at it. So we have to train people to think about the outcome. If I choose the donut over the cabbage and the cucumber, I may be getting the excitement of the taste buds now, but I'm going to pay later. You know, so, and I understand, trust me, been there, done that, income tightness and all that stuff, but we got to train people to make the best decisions that they can with what they have.
So now talking about the farm, talking about what grows out of this earth, and we connect to that, let's talk about the protein part, the meats, the steak that we enjoy. Talk about it. I don't know where to start on the question because there's so much that I can say, but we would like to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think there was life. Now, I still do eat meat, don't get me wrong. But I didn't think there was life apart from meat 3 or 4 times a day. But I found out that there is life apart from meat 3 or 4 times a day. And I'm not telling people, because I'm not 100%, as they would say, vegetarian. Now, I am extremely conscientious of where and how, whatever, whether it be meats, vegetables, or whatever, is raised. Because I realize I am what I eat, or I am what my body is able to assimilate. So when it comes down to the meat world, I would encourage people to make sure that if it's a cow or a chicken, that these things were allowed to have sunlight, to roam as animals do, making sure this, I'm sorry?
Free range.
Free range. I would encourage that versus meat that's pumped with hormones and the animal was fed with all this genetically modified foods like the average salmon. Now, the salmon, I love it. I just had some yesterday, you know, but when I got to the restaurant, I asked them, is this a wild caught salmon? Because I don't want you feeding me, not me, a salmon that was given corn, because corn does not grow in the ocean. So why are you feeding a salmon corn when corn doesn't grow in the ocean? Well, I realized that it's one of the farm-raised salmon that is most in our supermarkets now. You have to look very carefully to find wild salmon. So I don't want something that is genetically altered, genetically modified, or loaded with hormones and all types of chemicals. I don't want anything like that in my body because I have to consider, and now listen to this. I literally talk to my food. I know you might think it's weird, but I do. I will talk to that food item and ask it, now you tell me, what are you going to do when I let you in here? Are you going to make me sleepy after I've eaten you as a meal? Going to make me tired? What long term are you going to do for my body? Now, naturally, it can't speak back except through the knowledge that I've gained. But if I look at that packet of food and a 3rd grader can't pronounce those words, I'm very leery about putting it in my body. You know, if it's loaded with chemicals like, or words like, what is this? Like, you ever heard the word azotic carbonamide?
Long.
Oh, azotic carbonamide. It is not a natural element, or atrazine, or bisphenol A. You know, our ancestors would turn over in their grave to find out we were eating something with what? And you don't even know how to pronounce it? You don't even know what it is. Why are you eating stuff like that? So when it comes down to anything, but particularly in the meat world, I don't want to eat stuff that's loaded with hormones and steroids and all that kind of stuff because it's going to have an adverse effect in my body as I go back to this. If the chemical makeup, see, the body's nothing but a chemical factory, breaking down chemicals on a regular basis. And there are times when we can bring chemicals in here that clash with the chemical makeup, and the result is going to be rashes. The result is going to be neurological brain problems that can come out of that, and just a whole slew of problems because the chemical makeup of what I put in does not match my bodily makeup. Now, if it does, no problem. But if I'm looking at a word like azotic carbonamide, I know y'all never heard of it, right? Well, azotic carbonamide is the stuff that the mats that children play on in school. Azotic carbonamide is the stuff that's in mats like that. That was in our 9-grain, that was in, and thank God, and I applaud them for taking it out. So I'm talking something that was national news. Azotic carbonamide was in Subway's 9-grain bread.
You know, I think I do remember hearing about that. I heard about the mats. I didn't know what it was, the chemical itself, but I did hear about the mats.
Uh-huh.
Let me ask you something though. You mentioned, and I know this might be a small, but you mentioned about salmon eating corn. You know, the farm raised salmon. What's in corn that's harmful? My understanding is it doesn't have what's it tryptophan, I think it is. There's nothing in it that we could really digest. I'd say if you ate a corn on the cob, there's really nothing in it that's nutritional for us anyway. It's kind of a fill you up, go put some butter on it, and that's your pleasure, because the corn doesn't really provide it. Why do you feel like if salmon is fed corn, then subsequently it would be some detriment?
Great question. And let me clarify that. The corn that I'm talking about, farm-raised salmon and other fish that are usually farm-raised, is genetically engineered. Mm-hmm. The top 3 crops that are genetically engineered in our country is corn, wheat, and soy. So it's that genetically engineered stuff that we have found out that they're given to the fish in those nets that are taken so far out into the water and do the farm raising of the fish. That genetically engineered corn, not that good stuff. That corn, that wheat, or that soy that is genetically engineered. And what it does, it causes the fat content in the fish to be like 18 to 30 grams of more fat in that fish versus if it's wild caught, eating just the regular stuff that fish eat out of the ocean, the fat content is lower. And the toxins in the genetically engineered stuff is usually lodged in the fat of the animal or the fish.
Okay. And by asking, do you find that they're pretty forthright in telling you? If you say, listen, this is a fish that was wild, are they pretty forthright in telling you the truth?
Yeah, usually, particularly if you want to keep the customer, so you tell me the truth. And then because I look at this stuff for so long, I can look at it and say, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the coloration. I can just about tell if you're trying to pull the wool over my eyes, because the coloration of a wild caught fish is not like the coloration of a fish that is farm raised. The wild caught is more reddish. The color is a deeper reddish looking color versus the one that is farm raised is lighter in color.
Uh-huh. So now moving to the next segment, which is, it's said that exercise is important. Everyday activities, some kind of activity. We blame it all on the COVID. We sit in front of the laptops. We go through Zoom meetings, conferences, calls. Now we have a reason, a good, legit reason that when we get off from this chair and we are 20 pounds heavier, we blame it on COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Exercise, exercise, as some would say, is one of the best medicines that we can give the body. And it's not like you have to be out running 3 miles or, doing all this. You can use your body weight. I mean, right here in this chair. And trust me, I've had to learn this because I was not stretching the way I should stretch, and messed around and got a sciatic nerve ordeal. And I've been going to the chiropractor, and she's been drilling me on stretch, stretch, stretch. So now I'll sit in this chair and do a stretching exercise, to help relieve some of the pain of me not stretching properly to where I got that sciatic nerve. So it's not like you have to do all of this and all of that. I mean, there are exercises you can do right in your chair. I mean, you can exercise, but you got to have a made-up mind and an understanding that exercise is tremendously beneficial. It is one of the best, some people say one of the best drugs that you can give the body. It's one of the best things that you can do for the human body for a lot of different reasons. A lot from mood, you feel better. You're in a better mood once you exercise, to circulation. I mean, this is why, it's been said that running and jogging and good walk, stuff like that is so good circulation. Diabetes is a metabolic problem. So you need movement to help keep metabolism, things flowing through the system. You don't want to just, even now they're telling truck drivers, don't just drive somewhere for 6 and 7 hours without stopping, because you're slowing down circulation. Every hour and a half, 2 hours, get out, stop that vehicle and walk around to help with circulation. A lot of problems are circulatory in nature. So exercise is, oh my God, it's so important. And I went to the doctor some years ago, and when I was in North Carolina, and he said, well, how often do you exercise? I said, usually about 3 to 4 times a week at that time. And when he told me how to live longer, then I increased my exercise anywhere from 6 to 7 days a week. It's not as heavy on some days as others, but I can't remember the last time I went 3 days, just did 3 days of exercise. Oh no, oh no. And see now, I'm not the typical. I will tell Calvin Ellison, if you want to eat, you're going to exercise. That's how I talk to myself. So we're oftentimes too easy on ourselves, and we've lost sight of one of what I call the generals of good health, and that is discipline. So I've got to discipline myself. Cut the excuses out, Calvin Ellison. As I've already told you that, common sense tells you that you gotta exercise. If not, you're gonna blow up, or you're not gonna be as heart healthy as you can. Your lungs are not gonna get the best quality of oxygen because you've never taken the time to push yourself to deep breathing, and you don't have to exercise to deep breathe. You can just sit right in your chair. And the amazing thing that deep breathing does to the body, even with helping to lower the blood pressure, and there's a lot of good benefits. So in some of this, we literally do have to cut the excuses out and consider people who can't exercise as we can. My mother-in-law, before she passed away, had both legs amputated before she wished in her latter years that she could walk like the average person. And so when I see people who are amputees for various reasons, and people who wish they could do what we can do that's got a good measure of health, and I tell us, we gotta cut the excuses out. We've gotta promote our #1 wealth. And that's what it's all about. That exercise is all about using exercise to promote your health. Because if I'm not gonna, the less time I spend promoting my health, typically the more time I may spend fighting disease.
So true. This is so true.
And I'd like to give, if time permits, I'd like to give some of my philosophical thoughts of that out there. I used to say that they are some of like the things that help frame the house, if you would. And then all this good nutrition stuff is like the stuff we bring in the house. You know, I'm convinced that we got to frame the house up before we can, you know, well, you're not going to bring your couch and refrigerator in a house that you haven't finished framing it. You're going to frame it, put all the sheetrock and walls and all that stuff in first. And there are certain things that I talk about when it comes down to framing the house up, like we need to plan. We need to plan to be healthy. We need focus. We've got to focus on our number one health, number one way. We need discipline. That's another part of the framing of the house. We need to establish good habits. And these are things that I had to learn because I was not doing good stuff. So I had to learn. I have a lot of people ask me at times, well, I can't eat right because I'm always on the run. Really?
Yes.
I said, why don't you prepare something that delights you instead of when you're getting into that urge, you're ready to eat at a certain time, take your food with you. Take the time, and preparation is one of those things to help frame the house. I got to plan, and in planning, I got to make preparation. Because when that urge comes on, and if I don't have my stuff with me, then I'm going to tend to want to stop over to this store and get this stuff that's not good for me. So when I'm traveling, I take my food with me. I went to South Africa years back, and I took some people from, took a medical doctor, director of the Office of Minority Health, and another person that works in that health field. And we got disconnected in New York. They didn't know where they were going. I mean, I'm the guide. And long story short, one of the people that I took with me, after the trip was over, said, man, I was so disappointed when we got separated. I'm like, yeah? He said, I really missed you. We all missed you. I'm like, well, thank you. He said, it really wasn't you that we missed. He said, I knew that you were loaded with food. He said, Tony, he said, I know you brought a lot of food with you, and I wanted some of your good food, you know, but I said all that to say is that we've got to prepare. We've got to plan. We've got to establish good habits. We've got to be disciplined. And unless we wire the house up with that, you may start bringing in all that good stuff and start doing those good things, but because you don't keep working with planning, preparing, establishing good habits, and walking in discipline as it pertains to health and all that. And how many times do we hear people saying that, hey, I was doing that 5 years ago. And I'm like, well, why didn't you keep it up? You know, you should have kept it up. But I found out they were not working with the law of planning, preparation, establishing good habits, keeping their health as your number one wealth and your focus. They were not doing those things. So I like to put those kind of thoughts out there that you got to work with these guys, because if not, you can have the best stuff around, but if you choose to eat, and look, you can have a good meal, but if you eat that good meal late at night,
that's me. That's me, right?
You know what I'm saying? It was me too. And I'm sitting there trying to eat steak and potatoes and greens and stuff, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and wondering why I was tired the next day. Well, the shop had been working all throughout the night. I hadn't given it any rest, you know, and not considering what that leads to, particularly long term. Now, you can get by with it a few times here and there, but long term, eating late at night, you can probably look at heart problems developing down the road. A lot of issues come out of that. And then I'm not even talking about the issues that come out of not getting good sleep, particularly between the hours of 10 to 2. We found out years ago that the more hours before 12 o'clock, they are double the value of the hours after 12.
Wow.
And why is that? One of the reasons why in that is because the body, what I call the shop, it really is open for the releasing, the production and the releasing of melatonin between 9:30, 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. That's when the body is in the mode of releasing that chemical, and you can't make up for it. And trust me, I did it for years. I used to go to bed at 12 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30. And I didn't realize I was creating, man, I was developing a lot of problems. And now I've curtailed them because now at a certain time, I hit that bed. And so you compound eating late at night and then going to sleep late at night. You study some of the consequences of not getting that rest, from heart problems to diabetes, to neurological problems, to even cancer development. Oh my God, a slew of diseases come out of just not going to sleep. And then you compound that with eating late at night, but you ate a good meal, but it was late at night. So yeah, and so this is why I have to establish, I like to establish certain philosophical statements in people's minds and curtail the activity. And I know our time is up.
I agree 120% with that. Because I've always been in good shape. Throughout my life, I've always been in good shape. I was involved in activities that just by circumstance that kept me in good shape. And when people would talk about nutrition and this is good, this is bad, I was like, listen, you know what? My diet is great. If I look at this chart, I'm doing the right things. But I was eating late at night. It took me forever to add that up. It took me forever to add that up. It's like, no, but you're eating the right thing, but you're eating late at night. That's a problem, because while you think you're sleeping, your body is just
it's working.
Trying to work out your last mistake. That 120%. I agree with you.
And the heavier the meal, the harder the body's got to work, just by design. The body's got to work harder to break down that steak than what it does that grape, or that broccoli, or that cauliflower. Oh, it's going to work much harder because the nature of the meat itself, And so, yeah, that's a very serious area. That sleep thing is my blood pressure. Now I'm eating right. I'm exercising.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. What is my blood pressure doing so high? Then when I looked into it, I got a nurse friend of mine. I told her about it about a year and a half ago. And she jumped on me, Uzma, so quick. She was like, let me tell you what you're doing. I know what you're doing. No, she didn't give me any mercy. And you know that. I'm in the grocery store. And I said, look, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go home right now and go to bed. And she said, and don't go home and go to bed either. I'm like, what? But my blood pressure is high. And you're telling me I'm not getting enough. Here's what she told me. She said, I can tell you two things right off the bat that you are not doing. You're not drinking enough water, and you are not going to bed early. I'm like, I'm caught, particularly on the bed thing. And I couldn't argue with her. And she was laying it on me. She kept laying it on me. And look, I said, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go home and lay down and rest. I'm going to go home and lay down and sleep. She said, and don't you go home and go down and sleep either. I'm like, what? But I thought you trying to help me. She said, no, because if you go home and sleep, you're not going to want to go to bed early. You're gonna go right back into your habit of going to bed late. And I'm telling you, since I've started going to bed earlier, my blood pressure dropped. Because it was high, it was like 180 over 102 or 101 or something like that. You know, it dropped over 40, 50 points just by going to bed earlier at night. It's been a drastic difference. Now, a few dietary increases too, but by going to sleep at night, oh, it dropped so many points. I'm like, wow, I can't believe it,
Wow, it was a beautiful conversation. Such an important information that we usually don't even pay attention to. Simple things that we can do to change our lifestyle, one at a time. And it will not cost as much, if we're willing to make that change. Thank you so much, Dr. Ellison. I cannot thank you enough. And I know that I will have you back on the NPU platform again and again and again. So it's always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for everybody joining. And it was live streamed, and I hope and I pray that a lot of people benefit out of this. And again, we will be bringing you to our platform again. So thank you so much. You all have a wonderful evening, and stay safe, stay healthy, and pay attention to what Dr. Ellison said. Simple stuff.
And I'm going to go and finish my meal.
All right.
Y'all have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
too.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.